But welcome everybody. Be sure to hit the like button. Be sure to hit the subscribe button.
I remember in middle school when you felt self-conscious if you were the last one to go through puberty. That really went topsy-turvy, didn't it?
Sometimes the Hasbara, it's too much explaining yourself and it's too apologetic.
Be sure to hit the notifications bell.
I actually do believe Israel won't just bomb countless civilians.
Be sure to tweet this out. Be sure to put this up on your Facebook.
You have to be kind to people. Being kind to the guys in this mess in the first place.
Put this up on your Reddit.
Chile is a country.
Be sure to cut and paste, a link to this to go into your favorite Facebook chat group.
It's good to see so many normal people in here.
Now, spanking isn't just my deep, dark personal secret. It's America's deep, dark secret.
I've never seen it explained so simply anywhere.
Put this on WhatsApp. Put this on Telegram. Put this on your favorite messenger app.
Hello and welcome to the Untitled Anarchist Seagull channel. I'm your host, an Untitled Anarchist Seagull called Elise. And yeah, it's continuing to be a real fucking week, as it has been. So, if you haven't heard the latest, earlier today, Iranian President Pezeshkian issued a statement that was sort of an olive branch to the Gulf dictatorship, saying essentially, our quarrel is not with you, it's with the assholes you allow to operate bases on your territory, and as long as you don't allow them to attack us from there, then we'll leave you alone, basically. And, I mean, no doubt, a de-escalation measure, no doubt also taking advantage of the fact that the Gulf dictatorships actually aren't all that happy with the US over this, because they were not consulted in advance. Despite the fact that Iran made it very clear that U.S. bases in the Gulf would obviously be a target if the U.S. tried shit like this again. They said that all the way back last year. And the U.S. response was almost immediate. They decided to commit one of the most blatant fucking war crimes of this already extremely criminal war. They bombed a desalination plant on the island of Reshem that supplied drinking water to 30 villages. And, yeah. I mean, what the fuck do you say? Marbar Amerika comes to mind. But, yeah, so yesterday we heard Rachel Maddow's Galaxy Brain take about how actually it's the Gulf dictatorships that put the US up to this, which is really clear in particular from the fact that they're targets and they are not happy about that fact. And I thought we'd look at some more of the wonderful analysis the ruling class has put out on the subject. We've got gonna start out with some Ben Shapiro. Boots on the ground in Iran. So I figured if there's somebody who's going to be just reliably full of shit specifically on this, it's gonna be Benny. In the description, it says, regime change shouldn't be a dirty word.
There will be boots on the ground, but not the way that the liars are telling you there will be boots on the ground. The worst case scenario...
Wait, okay, so there's a special way that there will be boots in the ground that's not the way... Which liars? I mean, he showed AOC, but actually it was Trump himself who said that he wasn't ruling that out. So, okay.
For leadership in Iran, still better than the Ayatollahs, and of course the Europeans remain gigantic cowards. Now, let's begin with this. A lot of people are asking questions about what happens after the Ayatollahs are gone in Iran, right?
I mean, what, plural Ayatollahs? Like, is Khamenei, like, multiple guys? Does he contain multitudes? Why are we saying Ayatollahs, Ben?
The question, and here is the answer from America's perspective. America first.
Oh, well, I mean, I'm glad if you get it from Ben Shapiro, it's totally America's perspective.
Almost certainly something better than what was. In reality, the only...
I mean, I would agree. Just the fact that the Gulf dictatorships are being so massively destabilized by this really does bode very well. I think that there's a good chance we will see improvements, just not necessarily ones that Ben will be happy with.
America would be worse off thanks to the current action is if the regime in Tehran is replaced with a worse regime run by even worse ayatollahs with even fast...
By even worse, like, he doesn't understand, like, what an ayatollah is, apparently.
Access to nuclear materials, ballistic missile development, and terror funding.
Right, so he's saying the only way this could possibly be worse is if the most probable scenario happens, namely that their constitutional order of succession is activated, as it already has been, and they respond to this aggression by beefing up their deterrent capabilities, which is exactly what they've been doing. So, okay, I mean, already great, getting off to a great start here. The worst case scenario from the point of view of, like, the shitheads who run the United States is exactly the most likely scenario at the moment. Hello, Adam.
That's it. If you have somebody who's worse, with more resources, speeding toward an even worse thing. That's it.
I mean, he's so astute. Ben is so clear. You can see why so many people watch him. Because, I mean, that point he just made about how, like, what would be worse is if things were worse. I mean, like, not everybody can bring themselves to say such an asinine sentence.
President Trump said as much the other day.
He said that the worst case scenario is if things get worse from his perspective.
Yes, the worst case would be we do this and then somebody takes over who's as bad as the previous person, right? That could happen.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, yes, that could, in fact, I mean, even worse. Let me just say, like, lots of scare quotes around even worse there. There are not enough quotation marks on the planet, actually. Like, worse from the U.S. perspective is actually not a bad thing.
We don't want that to happen. It would probably be the worst. You go through this, and then in 5 years you realize you put somebody in who was no better. So we'd like to see somebody in there that's going to...
Like, I mean...
bring it back for the people.
It would be the worst case scenario is if things would get worse. So what we're hoping is that things will get better. Well, I mean, wow. Like, and you can see why they get paid so much money, assholes like Ben Shapiro and Crowder and the rest of them. Because it's got to be hard to bring yourself to glaze this dickhead. I mean, even dickheads like them have to see what a fucking dickhead this dickhead is.
The president is correct, and you can see from his...
The president is correct. Wow, he's... yes. We gotta make sure things could get worse, and it would be worse if it was worse. Like, wow. I mean, it's so fucking astute. Go on, Ben, tell us more.
Smile, he does not think that worst thing is going to happen. Now, there are a ton of people out there. On the left, a lot of the left, and of course, on the Horseshoe Online click right.
The Horseshoe Online click right. Like, what the fuck are you, actually? I love how a horseshoe theory has suddenly become a thing for the far right now, apparently. See, this is the result, I mean, and I have to say, I mean, it is actually kind of delightful to watch this infighting. That, as far as I can tell, it was the D. Charlie Kirking of the right that led us to this situation. Where they're fighting amongst themselves, and like Ben Shapiro has noticed that he's surrounded by Nazis.
Ignoring that simple fact that the Ayatollahs are the worst possible regime at this point.
Wait, you just got done saying it's possible that there would be somebody worse.
Cataclysmic and unforeseeable failure. These people yell about the evils of regime change, about the dangers of a long-standing occupation with boots on the ground, and all the rest. So,
yeah, I mean, I wonder why they do that. I wonder if there's, like, any kind of recent experience with that has shown that is actually, like, fucking horrible and criminal.
Let's talk about all of that right now. Let's start with regime change. We keep hearing about how regime change is dangerous, a failure, all the rest.
I mean, not to mention just, like, fucking criminal, because the U.S. has no right to decide who governs other fucking countries. But okay.
Here's Chuck Schumer, the Senate Minority Leader and pathological liar, doing that yesterday.
Americans spent the last 2 decades fighting and dying in the Middle East.
Yeah, and you funded it.
Parents watched their kids shipped off to foreign lands. So many lives lost. So many.
Like, I mean, and he's what is he trying to pretend he was against this? He fucking funded it. He's one of the main reasons that was a bipartisan thing.
Wasted. So much suffering and anguish that scarred an entire
I mean, just hearing this guy claim to care about suffering and anguish at this point is actually just like fucking galling.
Why is Donald Trump hell-bent on making history repeat itself?
The thing is history repeating it? See, history repeating itself would be if he did this to someplace defenseless. This is history. This is comeuppance manifesting itself. He's gone after somebody who can actually kind of hold their own in a fight with the U.S. That's not history repeating itself. It's comeuppance manifesting itself.
Why is he plunging America headfirst into a war that Americans do not want and which he cannot even explain?
I mean, this motherfucker, like, actually blocked a vote on the War Powers Resolution when there was a chance still of preventing this. And he hasn't ruled out voting to fund this. It's worth noting, in fact, that a lot of Democrats have not ruled out voting to fund this. So, like, how the fuck? I mean, just the fucking balls on this guy to act like he's against this.
Schumer is such a ridiculous person. He's ridiculous.
I mean, okay, rare moment where I do have to say Ben Shapiro has a point. Chuck Schumer is a ridiculous person. Yeah, I mean, he's not even really against it, though. It's like, he's fine. Yeah, like, I mean, remember, the exact number of Democrats that were needed in order to pass this thing voted for it. And they were all people who were safe from any kind of re-election challenge. He did not whip against this. If the Democrats had all voted against it, the War Powers Resolution...
a wildly dishonest player. He's been yelling about the Ayatollahs for years, and then...
I mean, also true, yes. And I mean, except that I think he at least does know that it's a singular.
Quietly supporting the JCPOA, which was the Obama attempt to ship pallets of cash to the Ayatollahs. And
That's literally the opposite. I mean, it is so wild to hear the range of debate on the so-called sanctions on Iran. Because first of all, they start from the false premise that Iran has a nuclear weapons program. And then it gets worse from there. Because instead of just saying, you know, because this is economic strangulation that is literally killing people. And that is what we're talking about with the JCPOA. And that's what we're talking about before that and since.
Give them a 10-year runway to a bomb. But the truth is, he only cares enough to yell a little bit, and then he turns around and he yells at anyone who actually wants to do something about the Ayatollahs.
Well, I mean, he yells much louder, though, at the people who don't want this. Who don't want to do something about the Ayatollahs.
But let's talk about that term for a second, regime change. Regime change implies a long-standing commitment in which the United States engages in serious nation-building efforts.
Nation-building efforts. Yeah, the bullshit terminology is just flying hot and heavy here.
Sometimes that works. Germany and Japan are obviously the prime examples. South Korea.
I mean, not really.
Korea is another great example.
South Korea was not regime that it was not regime change. Like what is he talking about with South Korea actually? Because okay, the U.S. invaded South Korea when the situation was completely in flux. They had kicked out the Japanese, but they hadn't yet actually built a regime. They hadn't actually built anything there. And the U.S. imposed a fascist dictatorship on South Korea and killed between 1 and 200,000 people. That a great success there. Wonderful thing. I mean, that's just a gleaming example.
Times it doesn't. Afghanistan would be the prime example here. Iraq is actually a checkered example. I know, we sort of forgot about Iraq and what happened afterward.
Which is kind of funny to say at the moment, because actually the Iraqi resistance is taking the opportunity to work on liberating Iraq from U.S. occupation.
But Iraq is indeed a functioning but fragile quasi-democracy with
A functioning but fragile quasi-democracy.
GDP roughly 10 to 15
Hey,
times
Badger.
larger than it was under Saddam Hussein.
Wait, so the GDP was larger than at a time when it was subjected to so-called sanctions of mass destruction. Like, I think my personal GDP is probably higher than Iraq's was during that period. Like, that is such a dishonest... Like, compare it to Iraq's, the socioeconomic state of Iraq in the 1980s, when they had easily one of the highest living standards in the Arab-Iranian region, where their healthcare system was easily one of the best, where it was like people in the Arab world who could afford it sent their kids to Iraqi universities and their parents to Iraqi hospitals because the standard was so high. I mean, if you wanted to talk about this honestly, you would compare this to the situation in the 80s. But of course, nobody wants to admit the situation in the 80s, apart from everything else, because at the time the U.S. was backing Saddam Hussein to the hilt in a war of aggression against Iran.
The current regime has real problems and is associated with a wide variety of sectarian groups, but is certainly better than Saddam's was, even if most Americans believe that the cost wasn't worth it. That's a fair argument against the war in Iraq, but not against the principle of regime change overall.
I mean, there is, however, a much, much better argument, which is that we don't actually have the right to go in and impose governments on other countries, but okay.
In Iran, we're not actually really talking about regime change.
Oh, see, it's not regime change. It's all about the syllable you stress, you see.
In this technical sense. Because again, regime change refers generally to a U.S. overseen process of government building.
Colonization.
Where we put hundreds of thousands of troops on the ground, and then we ensure every step of the governmental transition. What we're talking about here is regime destruction or replacement.
Well, wait, okay, so regime destruction and replacement is not the same thing as regime change. Okay, go ahead. Let's hear this. New fucking bullshit buzzword just dropped.
Knock over a regime and let it fall. And then we don't actually participate in long-term nation building. Sometimes that works, and sometimes it doesn't, because it turns out that history is a complicated place. I'm gonna get to...
Yeah, I mean, too complicated for Ben. What fucking color is this blazer of his? Is that green? Did he just win the PGA Tour?
Some examples of that in a minute. First, a reminder, you need to go subscribe over at Daily Wire.
No, don't do that.
Right now for all of our awesome content.
Okay, so if you subscribe, see, they have awesome content. If you don't subscribe, you get like Ben Shapiro, but apparently if you subscribe, there's access to awesome content someplace on there.
Because we do have live content on the war pretty much continuously. Wired in live with Cabot Phillips, for example, today at 4 p.m. Eastern. This day. Why was that a mistake? Well, because Gaddafi was actually contained. And the people rebelling against him were a checkered group of sundry terrorists and others. And then there's Iran itself, where the Carter regime essentially withdrew support from the Shah of Iran.
That is not true, actually. I mean, Carter did not withdraw support from the Shah. Carter backed the Shah until the bitter end, even as the Shah was murdering tens of thousands of people in the streets. Carter was supporting the Shah until the very end. So, yeah, I mean...
In 78, 79, and we've been suffering with the consequences ever since.
Like, we've been suffering, have we been? Like, I have to say, it has not adversely affected my life in any way.
But there are more positive examples. So, for example, in Chile, we created the pressure that led to the coup against Marxist Salvador Allende.
Well, that's a good example. This is a good example. See, the good example is the fascist narco-dictatorship that murdered thousands of people and that has not fully been abolished there even now.
Was replaced with General Augusto Pinochet.
God, could you? He manages not to pronounce a single part of that name correctly. Augusto Pinochet, weón.
Who's an anti-communist and human rights abuser, but who began instituting capitalist mechanisms that eventually led to prosperity.
Prosperity for who, Ben?
And under American pressure, democratization.
That was not under U.S. pressure. I mean, wow, this is so wild, because that's not how any of that worked. First of all, it actually, I mean, it was an economic disaster. Still is, actually. For another thing, the pressure came from Chileans who were fighting against this regime from the start. The U.S. backed it till the hilt until it became an embarrassment, because the trouble, and it's interesting that you read the declassified documents, what keeps on coming up is that everybody, the whole point of having puppets in a country is that they're deniable, and they didn't have deniability with Pinochet. Everybody knew that Pinochet, what came from Pinochet was coming from Washington, and Pinochet managed to embarrass Washington enough that they finally just cut him loose. It wasn't U.S. pressure.
In fact, we are the ones who pressured Pinochet to give up power.
No, that's not true.
Thought about another military coup when he lost an election. We said, we will not support anything remotely like that. You're giving up power.
No, that is not how that went down. Okay, first of all, let's remember that he didn't want to have this plebiscite in the first place. It wasn't an election. It was a referendum on whether he would continue to rule. And that was forced because there was a fucking ongoing, escalating uprising throughout the 1980s in Chile. Okay. And it got to the point where, I mean, Pinochet was increasingly seen as a liability, and it was looking like he was going to lose it. What is true is that at one point he talked to his CIA handlers, said if he looks like losing it, he's going to manipulate the result to make sure he comes out. And they said, we won't help you with that. You will be on your own at that point. And he stepped down. But the U.S. isn't the reason that he had that in the first place.
Or, for example, Panama, where we deposed Manuel Noriega.
Okay, so this is okay, what makes this successful?
We then installed the winner of the prior election, and things worked out pretty well.
And I mean, that's not what happened at all. The U.S. invaded Panama. First of all, the U.S. had backed Noriega until, again, he became something of an embarrassment. Then the U.S. invaded Panama and occupied the place and had a fake election where the U.S. candidate won, and it was denounced by basically the entire international community because, obviously, an election under conditions of violent military occupation can't really be considered what you could call a free election. And now it is a haven for international money laundering. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, clearly wonderful.
And, of course, that's pretty much what we just did in Venezuela, where we destroyed the top of the regime. And
I mean, it didn't really destroy the top of it. You kidnapped one guy. Now, it's true that increasingly Delcy is looking like She is very she is very much a plant. I was waiting to actually see how it shook out before I said anything, but increasingly she is just ridiculously sycophantic to the U.S. So, but it was still that was not regime change. The regime is still there. The entire system of government, it's just that this order of succession kicked into operation. She was the vice president, so she took over. Hello, Adria.
And we left a second person in place. And now that person, Delcy Rodriguez, is basically being squeezed until she squeaks. She put out a statement yesterday.
I mean, and why is this good, Ben? Like, why exactly is it good that the U.S. just sort of imposes regimes on other people's countries? Like, would you be okay with this happening in the U.S.? Like, say, I don't know, if a coalition of Latin American countries got really sick of what the U.S. does there and decided to overthrow your favorite guy and, I don't know, put somebody halfway decent in there, just return the favor for all the coups the U.S. has done?
Via Twitter. Quote, I thank President Trump for the kind willingness of his government to work together on an agenda.
Yeah, I mean, this is pathetic. This is hostage stuff. An agenda that strengthens binational cooperation for the benefit of the peoples of the United States and Venezuela. Weona, ¿dónde la viste?
Strengthens binational cooperation for the benefit of the peoples of the United States and Venezuela. So,
yeah, I mean, yeah, it's called hostage taking. In fact, one of Trump's close associates was just really gave the game away recently. Said that the idea is that they are, I mean, he was just like saying the quiet part out loud. He wasn't opposing this plan. He was bragging about it. The plan being to coerce Maduro into claiming and into perjuring himself and saying that he stole the election for Biden in 2020 because, of course, I mean, Venezuela just loved Biden. Everybody, I mean, that fucking makes sense. But the thing is that you're not really supposed to announce that in advance because there's this thing called cross-examination.
Words, not all quote-unquote regime change is alike. It's not all the rock. And pretending that it is ignorant. There's a reason why Venezuela was handled one way and why...
Well, the reason is that there was just there was no fucking chance, actually, of the U.S. just doing a full-on invasion. You've got an armed population. They have fairly well-equipped armed forces. They're not defenseless. And the U.S. would be doing well to even land an invasion force.
Iran is being handled in another way. And it's not necessarily because Venezuela is in the Western Hemisphere. It's because Iran is run by a fundamentalist Islamist death cult.
Well, since when does Ben have anything against death cults?
I mean, in order to truly understand how evil the current Ayatollahs are, Patrick Bet-David, who has some experience in this area, yesterday on his show, he sort of explained Ayatollah Khomeini's regime.
Khomeini's dead, though. Khomeini died a long time ago, actually. You're talking about Khamenei. I mean, Khomeini died in the 1980s.
You guys want to know what Khomeini once said about what to do to women in prison? Have you ever heard him? No.
I mean, let me just say, there's absolutely no reason to believe that this guy's quotes are accurate.
Want to verify this, Rob? He once said female prisoners who are virgins must be raped before execution to prevent them from entering heaven.
Did he say that?
Isn't he an amazing guy to say something like that?
I mean, if he said something like that, and I feel like it's probably unlikely.
That's the guy that died. When he died, I was in Iran.
Yeah, yes, he died in Iran.
June 3rd, 89. I was there when the guy died. They didn't kill him. He died. This guy who was supposed to be a hero for them, female prisoners who are virgins must
like, what's your source for that quote, though?
Be raped before execution.
Because I feel like this guy would not be the first person I'm hearing this from if there were any basis for that quote.
you go pull up the craziest thing he said in one of the books that he wrote, you would sit there and say, no human being, you would never write that. You would never subscribe to that.
Yeah, I mean, what he's describing is actually kind of what Israel does, but okay.
Okay, that is the regime, and he was Khomeini was then followed by Khamenei, and that is the nature of the regime.
That's true. The nature of the regime is that propagandists in the U.S. make up quotes and attribute them. It's like, and it's wild, because it's like, if you want to talk about the misogyny of the Islamic Republic of Iran, you don't need to make stuff up. There's plenty of misogynist shit they do. But, I mean, at the same time, I'm kind of nonplussed, like, these guys suddenly caring about misogyny.
Regime change is not all the same. When Marco Rubio, for example, says we'd like to see regime change in Cuba, that doesn't mean that we're about to launch hundreds of thousands of troops.
I mean, you would have to, though.
Or even tens of thousands, or even thousands, in another Bay of Pigs incident.
I mean, it looks like there was an attempt, though, and it didn't work out well.
Love to watch that regime turn over.
Yes, because they want it to go back being another Epstein Island, like it was before 1959, when it was basically the Epstein Island of the mafia in the U.S.
Will you make a public commitment today to rule out U.S. regime change in Cuba?
Regime change?
Yes.
Oh, no, I think we would love to see the regime there change. We would like to, that doesn't mean that we're going to make a change, but we would love to see a change. There's no doubt about the fact that it would be of great benefit to the United States if Cuba was no longer governed.
I mean, especially because Epstein Island isn't operating anymore.
By an autocratic regime.
But you know what we mean by regime change. We don't mean, I wish someone else were in charge. When we talk about regime change, we're talking about using the power of the United States, usually kinetic power, but often other kinds of...
I love kinetic power. Shut the... Like, what he's talking about is murdering people. Kinetic power. Okay. So, I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. See what else... this is a long video.
Two things can be true at the same time. We can acknowledge the brutal reality of the Iranian regime and their murdering of protesters and targeting of people. And we can also know for sure that a forever war will not resolve that issue. We've seen what's happened in other areas of the Middle East, in Libya and Syria and beyond. Of course, the war in Iraq. And we are already at multiple American service members that are dead.
I mean, multiple. It's cute that she's actually maintaining the polite fiction that only 6 U.S. service members have died in this. There's simply no fucking way. There are all sorts of indications that many more have actually died in this, and that the U.S. is covering that up because, again, the U.S. is trying to avoid acknowledging that this was an extremely ill-advised thing from their standpoint.
For an illegal action that the president has pursued with no plan out. They don't know why they got into this war. They're talking about 400 or 500 different reasons, and they don't know how they're getting out.
I mean, I think the way they're getting out is probably going to be very similar to the way they got out of the last one, which is that Israel and the U.S. sort of beg for a ceasefire, and Iran says, well, if you stop attacking us, we'll stop shooting back.
I would just like to point out at this point that by the kinds of logic that AOC uses, the United States...
You mean the logic here being that you should look at historical examples...
...ever be able to win a single war ever in human history, ever.
Wait. What? So if you acknowledge that regime change efforts in various countries have just been, that the U.S. has imposed on those countries, have been absolute horrible bloodbaths, therefore that means that the U.S. can never win a war? Like, what the fuck does that mean?
Ever. Because the idea of a war with no casualties or cost from the American side is not a reality.
That was not what she said, though. That...
Of course, that is sort of what she wants, is an America prone and on its back. But let's be clear.
I mean, no she doesn't, unfortunately.
There will be boots on the ground in Iran, and there should be, They just won't be ours.
Okay.
Yes, of course, there are very likely to be special operators on the ground. There probably are right now. And that's not a shot. The United States has special operators literally all over planet Earth. Right now, today,
Committing all sorts of crimes and getting away with
in
it.
80 to 90 countries at any given time. Iran, Jordan, Venezuela, Ecuador, from Somalia and Djibouti to the Philippines. But I assume that's not what the critics are talking about.
I mean, they should be, because that's fucked up too.
When they talk about boots on the ground, they're talking about an Iraq-style invading force with hundreds of thousands of boots.
Which is literally what it would take in order to achieve the things that the U.S. is saying that they want to achieve. And even that would be a long shot, because the thing is, you actually have to get in there. Like, Iraq, there was not really a problem actually doing the invasion itself, because Iraq was defenseless. The occupation was another matter. With Iran, the invasion itself is going to be... Yeah, I mean, he just, like, there are no goalposts. He just sort of notionally moves them all over the place.
On the ground. American boots on the ground. President Trump isn't going to do that.
Could you tell us about the president's current thinking about ground troops and whether they could be used? If they were to be sent into Iran, what would they be used for? What's the situation?
Well, they're not part of the plan for this operation at this time.
I mean, Trump himself has since said that he doesn't rule it out. And, I mean, Iran's response was, I mean, it was just, we are waiting for them, and it left some U.S. slopcaster totally speechless.
But I certainly will never take away military options on behalf of the President of the United States or the Commander-in-Chief, and he wisely...
Those are the same guy. What do you mean, or?
Does not do the same for himself. I know there's many leaders in the past who like to take options off of the table without having a full understanding of how things could develop. So
She's so much worse at this, at, like, doing propaganda for U.S. atrocities than Matt Miller.
It's not part of the current plan, but I'm not going to remove an option for the president that is on the table.
So she's just saying she's not going to tell them what the president will do. But
No, in other words, this has not been ruled out.
let's be clear. If you think that Donald J. Trump, according to Caroline Leavitt, is going to put hundreds of thousands of boots on the ground, American
I mean, he hasn't ruled it out.
boots on the ground, you're out of your mind.
I mean, I agree that it would be a long shot to actually get them there. They would be under fire well before making a landing.
Presumably, what we will do is help clear the space for others to put their boots on the ground. And this brings us to the news about the Kurds.
Who are also saying they're not particularly keen on being exploited in this way.
Here's a map of ethnicities in Iran. I know that a lot of people think that Iran is entirely Persian. It is not, in fact, entirely Persian. Now, people don't know this, but Iran is actually quite diverse.
You see, he's going to do a race science now.
Iran, of course, spans an enormous area from Turkmenistan in the north to Iraq in the west, over to Afghanistan in the east and Pakistan. Persians actually represent only about 60 to 65% of the country. Azerbaijanis are somewhere between 15 and 20%. The Kurds are somewhere between 7 and 10%. Lurs from 5 to 7%. And then there are a bunch of even smaller groups that are...
I mean, this just kind of... when I hear U.S. imperial planners and propagandists talk like this, I can't help remembering a memo by Heinrich Himmler. He issued an order on what was called the treatment of alien races in the occupied Eastern territories. And what he said was that essentially to weaponize the ethnic diversity of Poland. He said every single ethnic group, no matter how small, should be dealt with individually and separately in order to play them off against each other. Amongst other things. It was actually a fairly long memo. But it is, I mean, very much This sort of it is very much the sort of playbook that we see in cases like Syria, in cases like Iraq. I mean, it's also very similar to how Israel has tried to play different ethnicities of Palestinians and religious groups of Palestinians against each other.
That are in the country. America, believe it or not, is technically whiter than Iran is Persian. And religiously, while 85% of the population is technically Shia, the polls show that roughly 30 to 40% of the adults in Iran identify as atheist or agnostic or...
What poll is this?
...irreligious. Only 40% identify as Muslim and 32% as religiously Shia. Which means that there may be more secularists...
Well, yeah, see, so therefore what? Like, they're not... Okay, assuming that those figures are accurate, and I have my doubts. Apart from everything, Iran actually has some pretty draconian laws against apostasy. So somebody who is a Muslim saying that they are an atheist, I mean, that would not be entirely without risk in Iran. But, so, assuming that that's true, like, that doesn't mean they actually want to see the U.S. puppet state reestablished in Iran. That doesn't mean that they actually like to see the U.S. bombing fucking primary schools and water treatment plants and the Red Crescent headquarters.
Then there are religious Shia members of the population, which is not in line with the Ayatollahs. Okay, so that means that there's not tremendous wide and deep support for the regime. Obviously. Now, back to the Kurds. So if you look at that...
No, that doesn't mean that at all. Like, I mean, why don't you look at any data on support for the government? If you're going to, like, he's just sort of skipped over that. He's like, look, there's ethnic diversity and religious diversity in Iran. Therefore, nobody supports the government. Like, that's not how any of that works.
What you see is the area to the west. That is Kurdish area. That is where the Kurds are most concentrated. That light green area that borders Iraq and then somewhat into Turkey, that area is largely Kurd. Okay, so back to the Kurds. They are religiously Sunni, but their religious observance is kind of all over the map.
I will say that there is a whole racket of in the West, there's a whole racket of people who do grift on the far right as ex-Muslims, which is a separate matter entirely. But I don't entirely buy that people are declaring themselves atheists in polls in Iran.
Them after encouraging them to rise up against Saddam Hussein. And of course, they aligned with the United States in the war against ISIS from 2014 to 2019.
Oh, well, no, they did not so much align with the United States as they were used as cannon fodder in an effort to redirect ISIS to more useful targets. And now the U.S. is massacring them again.
And then, of course, the United States tended to abandon them to the forces of the new Syrian regime with the help of the Turks. So the Kurds have been pretty solidly aligned with the United States.
Okay, wait a second. So the idea is that they've been completely screwed over by the U.S. repeatedly, and therefore they're going to be very keen on assisting the United States and imposing a puppet regime nobody wants on Iran?
On repeated instances, and they've been kind of betrayed by the United States on repeated instances. Now, we are hearing a lot of reports that Iranian Kurds are arming up and crossing the border from Iraq back into Iran.
There are actually reports that Iranian Kurds in Iraq are very specifically ruling out anything to help out the U.S. Yeah, I mean, I feel like he almost certainly is. I haven't looked it up, but it just seems unlikely, and I don't trust him with statistics in the first place.
Strikes, meaning U.S.-Israeli strikes in Iran. And you can see there's a lot of strikes right around Tehran, right around the capital. That's kind of IRGC bases.
I mean, no, that's not what they've been striking. They've been striking residential areas.
The area, apparently, that the IAF, that would be the Israeli Air Force, is really focusing on is in the west. in those areas, in the IRGC border patrolled areas.
What's interesting is there are reports that groups of people in Western Iran who had previously been at odds with the IRGC are now saying they're on the same side. I saw a thing, it was like, they're like communities that have lived traditionally from smuggling and have therefore ended up not on very good terms with the IRGC. And that now that this war has started, they are very much on the side of the IRGC. They want to defend the country against the U.S.
Prevent Iranian Kurds, who historically were sort of exiled into Iraq, from coming back across the border with weapons. That is not a mistake. That is a strategy.
I mean, it's not necessarily... It's, right now, an unsubstantiated report more than anything.
Presumably, the ground is being cleared for an actual battle between Iranian Kurds who wish to reclaim historic Kurdish territory and the Iranian IRGC. The Kurds themselves, they have a long and fascinating history. They are the largest stateless population in the world. There are 25 to 35 million people.
Okay, so this is him trying to explain how how manipulating the Kurds is going to work out really well this time. I think we're going to switch over at this point because he's starting to bore me. Actually. And I thought we'd look at some liberal slop. We've got David Pac-Man, the 1630 Fund's very own. Let's see. I mean, what's really interesting is if you look at these 1630 Fund bankrolled creators, they don't really they don't really take much time to talk about like things like wars the US is engaged in. They will talk about just about anything else. I mean, just complete, like, gossip slop about Trump, mostly. But they don't really show a great interest in talking about anything that matters. Okay, this is taking a second to load. What the hell is going on with us?
The anti-war president and winner of
Here we
the
go.
FIFA Peace Prize, inaugural, of course, has done the unthinkable, or has he? The United States is now at war with Iran.
Again.
Or are we?
I mean, yes.
Is it a special military operation? Is it simply a political assassination?
Of over 1,000 people?
Is it actually a war?
Yes. Like, there is no... Like, is he gonna seriously pretend there's any doubt about that?
And if it is a war, is it a legal one?
No.
What on earth is happening to American foreign policy?
Yeah, I mean, nothing that would surprise anyone who's paying attention to it for more than 5 minutes.
I'm going to break it all down for you. I'm going to give you my thoughts. And I think it's important to start with the Ayatollah was a terrible theocratic leader. No one is denying that. If you were simply to say,
I mean, judging from the number of people who have gone out in the street in Tehran, in all over Iran, to mourn him and to call for revenge, it seems like maybe they're saying a fair number of people seem to think he was a pretty good theocratic leader, actually.
listen, 90+ million people in Iran under the brutal oppression of this theocratic regime, it's hard to find more appropriate
Like, did he not prepare this?
People to want deposed.
I mean, I have no trouble finding more appropriate people I would like to see deposed. Like, I mean, there's this guy in the White House, and then there's this guy in Israel. Novoa, Bukele. Like, actually, there's a very long list before we get to him.
Very difficult. The Ayatollah would be at the top of the list, but
whose list?
What we have to ask are really three questions, and we're going to go through these here. Number one, was this legal?
No, I mean that's not even a serious question. It was literally a war of aggression. It is like people went to the gallows at Nuremberg for this.
Number two, is it advisable for the United States to be doing it? And
no, it clearly isn't. Not least because it is a fucking crime, but also because it's a crime the U.S. does not look like getting away with.
Number three, even if you're fine with the United States doing it, is Trump the guy we want running the thing, given his corruption? So let's come back to that.
Like, I mean, I don't think anyone else's corruption would be better. His incompetence is actually kind of nice in this context because it increases the likelihood that the U.S. loses this thing.
A lot of different news headlines dropping over the weekend. The United States and Israel, now with the help of the UK apparently, which is going to allow the US to launch missiles from their territory, launched attacks on Iran on a number of sites.
I'm gonna say what kind of sites?
And early rumors were ultimately confirmed that the Ayatollah Khamenei was killed.
It's not Khomeini, he died in the 1980s. It's Khamenei. For fuck's sake.
The supreme
different
leader
guy.
Of Iran. Iranians mostly rejoicing. That's true.
What do you mean mostly? Where do you see mostly rejoicing? Like, where do you see, okay, 92 million people, where's the rejoicing that you see, David? Because, I mean, and let me just be clear, yeah, there probably are some who are rejoicing. He definitely had his opponents within Iran. Absolutely. That is not in question. But huge spontaneous crowds have been demanding revenge for his assassination. Huge numbers of people. Actually, it's like for successive days, and this is despite the fact that there is a major risk. I mean, these huge street concentrations are a perfect target for the U.S. and Israel, and yet they are refusing. They are like going out in defiance, knowing that there's every chance they personally could get bombed. So, like, what do you mean, most Iranians?
And I don't think that we need to pretend as though the average Iranian is really angry about this.
I mean, it certainly looks like they are. Like, if you're gonna say something that remarkable, that most Iranians are rejoicing in that, you have to actually cite a fucking source. Like, that is a wild thing to, because that is a huge claim. Because if you're like, even like, I mean, because the thing is, there's one thing to say that you don't like a person who's running your country. There's quite another thing to say that you like that a foreign country, a hostile foreign country, bombed the place and murdered him along with his daughter and his 14-month-old granddaughter. That's a completely different thing. Like, I mean, to just say that without any fucking evidence, Jesus.
Iranians, especially young Iranians, of which there are many, have been, to the degree that they are comfortable, expressing dissatisfaction and
where have they been expressing this
disgust?
Well,
for a very long time with this theocratic regime.
They have been expressing dissatisfaction and disgust with a number of things, But that's not the same thing as saying that they're glad that the U.S. murdered him along with his fucking 14-month-old granddaughter. And if you're going to say, like, that is really dishonest, actually, what he did there. Because it's one thing to make that claim. It's another thing to go see to just sort of shift the goalposts and go, well, there have been a lot of people protesting against the government, and they're, as if that is somehow proof that most people in Iran are glad that this guy's dead, along with his daughter and granddaughter.
Iran now is retaliating. Iran attacking Europe.
Iran is not attacking Europe. Like, what the fuck is he talking about? Where in Europe is Iran attacking?
Iran attacking Israel. Iran attacking Dubai. There are fears of potential sleeper cells in the United States.
Like, not really, though.
And Iran has made very clear that all bets are now off. And
yeah, they made that clear. It's worth remembering. I cannot repeat this enough. They said that a year ago. A year ago, after the last aggression, they said that all bets would be off, and they made a list of exactly how they would retaliate. And they're doing exactly that.
They will be doing what they can to target Americans, American troops, the United States.
Not just random Americans, specifically U.S. military assets.
And so, whatever we think about the attack carried out against Iran, we also have to consider what are the follow-on effects going to be, and is the average American in the United States safer or more at risk? Is the average American abroad safer or more at risk?
Well, is that the only thing we should be caring about, though? What about just, like, the people who are being murdered in Iran? What about the Palestinians, for example? Because Israel has actually re-escalated the genocide in Gaza under the cover of this aggression against Iran. I don't think we're going to hear David Pakman talk about that, because, again, I mean, chorus money means never having to acknowledge genocide.
That's number one. Secondly, we then look at Russia's response. Russia has now said, well, Donald Trump has untied our hands, suggesting that any restraint Russia was exhibiting now goes away.
Well, yeah, I mean, why would they? Because, look, again, what has been seen is the de-escalation and appeasement of the United States doesn't work. Now, I have my doubts about Russia doing much of anything. They are apparently sharing intelligence with Iran, but other than that, the thing is, they are flat out trying to maintain a stalemate against the poorest country in Europe. So the likelihood of them actually really doing anything militarily beyond intelligence sharing and other kind of support activities seems unlikely.
Because they feel as though the United States has crossed some kind of red line.
I wonder what kind of red line that might be.
And now, whether it is in shared defense of Iran or for whatever other reason, or for Russia's ambitions in Ukraine,
or because they feel like they're probably next.
Hands are now untied. We also have reporting that the Saudi crown prince was secretly in favor of this attack and lobbying for it. And
that is not surprising, although that would not be entirely surprising, although it's worth noting that there are also concerted efforts to drive a wedge between Saudi Arabia and Iran. Like, they are on better terms than they had been for a long time, thanks largely to talks brokered by China. And that is something that has pissed off both the US and Israel in the region. So finding ways to drive a wedge there are important. And in that context, it's worth noting there are attacks on the Gulf dictatorships, including Saudi Arabia, that the Gulf dictatorships themselves are saying are not coming from Iran. And Iran also says are not coming from Iran. Which begins to sound like Israel is trying to start some shit.
this is something that I got a lot of emails from folks in the audience, sort of confused, saying, you know, David, it seems as though there are other countries in the region that are actually happy about this, despite being what we call Muslim countries. And that is absolutely true. And again, this is all, I'm just trying to give, give you the most
that's not really clear, actually. I mean, like, the Gulf states are very unhappy with this, it seems, because they weren't consulted.
Actual assessment possible here. It doesn't make the attack right or wrong, and we're going to get into that in a moment. We are...
Oh, I can't wait to hear him get into that.
There are some countries in the Middle East that, despite having shared religion with Iran, sort of, because remember that not all of these predominantly Muslim countries adhere to the same teachings or the same sects of Islam, and that's a relevant story. The Saudis, for example, have great interest in stability in the region.
What exactly does that mean, though?
And therefore, they see Iran for what it is, which is a sort of tinderbox ready to explode.
Yeah, I mean, it's so wild. I mean, Iran is so volatile that all it took was a massive aerial assault from two genocidal hostile powers to make them retaliate. I mean, we would talk about a fucking loose cannon.
In a very economically damaging way. You need only look at the stock market, which opened very down. Now it's up a little bit. It's unclear where it'll end up, but futures down hundreds of points. Oil markets thrown into chaos. You need only look at that to understand, wow, the Emiratis, the Saudis, there are a lot of countries in that region that see Iran as a similar threat to that which...
But wait a second. The reason that's happening is precisely because the U.S. started this war. This is one of the reasons the GCC states aren't actually happy about this war, because it is completely killing their economy. Like, Qatar is no longer processing liquid natural gas. They shut down their supercooler plants. So, because they want to make sure that there is no gas in the pipeline in case they get attacked by Iran or by parties unknown, because that would be an absolute fucking catastrophe, as opposed to a, like, relative fucking catastrophe, which it would be if there's none in the pipeline, but it'll take months for them to get that back online. Like, this is not good for them, and it is literally an obvious and predictable consequence of the war that he's talking about.
The United States, the UK, Israel, and other allies sought. Okay, so that's the sort of framework and setup for this. Now, I think that there is a lot to be gleaned here from listening to some Iranian Americans.
Oh, we're about to see some Savakis, I think. Some Iranian Americans. Some.
And one of them is friend of the show, Congresswoman Yasemin Ansari, who put out a tweet that I think in 3 paragraphs really well explains a lot of what the stakes are here. Let's put that up on the screen. She wrote, quote, Khamenei was the epitome of evil.
Okay, let's see. Hang on, I'm gonna have to restart this because that is the only way to actually get the camera working again, so I'll be back in just a minute. Watch this space. Sorry about this. Okay, it looks like I'm back. Sorry about that. So, okay, the kind of Iranian Americans we are supposed to listen to are ones who are actually literally in the U.S. government. That's kind of convenient, isn't it? And it's worth noting that she has been part of so-called Democratic Majority for Israel. So, like, her humanitarian concern is kind of selective.
For decades, he oversaw the torture, imprisonment, and murder of countless Iranians who dared to demand freedom. American blood is on his hands as well. No one should mourn him, and his death is a relief. But removing one man does not dismantle a brutal regime. Military force alone will not secure a democratic future for
Hello,
Iranian
Badger.
people, and it risks putting U.S. troops in further danger if there is no serious plan for what comes next.
And, like, I mean, to talk about this and not mention, I mean, like, you're gonna talk about the torture, imprisonment, and murder of countless Iranians. What about, like, the Shah?
An action of this magnitude demands strategy, clarity, and a credible path forward. She finishes by saying, I want nothing more than a free Iran and safety and security.
So, I mean, she says absolutely nothing about the fact that there are massive attacks on civilians and civilian infrastructure in Iran right now. Just completely seems to leave that out.
For innocent Iranians, that requires more than force. It requires seriousness, accountability, and a real plan to support the Iranian people in determining their own future.
Which is another way of saying ensuring that they actually determine that they want the future that the U.S. wants for them.
So there is a lot there, and I think that that is very well said. Let's go through this in layers.
Wow, I mean, if David Pakman thinks it's well said, then that's great.
I wanted the Iranian regime out. That is a terrible regime of human rights abuse.
Like, I mean, it's really kind of wild to hear anyone, like, in the Middle East in particular, in the Arab Iranian region, to talk about, like, human rights abuses and only talk about official U.S. enemies when the worst human rights abusers of the region are all on the U.S. payroll. Saudi Arabia. Heard of it, by any chance?
Theocratic extremism. It is nasty stuff by any sense of the word. And maybe you are in category 1, which is you are happy that the Ayatollah is out. But then the question becomes, 86-year-old Ayatollah, known succession planning had been done. Does killing the Ayatollah really end the regime?
Of course not.
I worry that the answer is it doesn't.
You worry. Like, obviously it doesn't. There's an order of succession. It's right in their constitution, which they have. Like, I mean, that's the thing. These, like, 1630 creators act like they're providing serious analysis, but they clearly don't know anything about what they're talking about. They don't provide any useful context. Right now, I mean, he's just spouting regime talking points. Like, there's just, I mean, including just ludicrous statements, like the idea that most people in Iran wanted him dead. There's absolutely no evidence to support that.
Next question is, well, what about the U.S. doing regime change? Many in my audience will say, Ayatollah out, that's phenomenal. But I don't want the United States.
What about 14-month-old granddaughter out? Is that phenomenal too? Because she was killed at the same time.
Being involved in regime change. And part of the reason why may be that the United States being involved in regime change has gone so horribly wrong.
Well, I mean, it hasn't so much gone so horribly wrong as it's done precisely what it was expected and intended to do, which is kill millions of people.
So long. And it kind of sort of seems to be illegal.
Kind of sort of seems to be illegal? No. It is absolutely black letter law that it is illegal. It is a crime.
But maybe you actually say, hey, you know what? I'm for the greater good.
Whose greater good?
And I am okay with the United States being involved in regime change, right? So,
like, okay, shouldn't that be but? I'm for the greater good, but I'm okay with the U.S. being involved in regime change?
We're going with the even if you believe that the Ayatollah out is good. And if you have no problem with the United States being involved in regime change in Iran because you believe it is for the greater good, do you really want the United States under Trump managing?
Oh God! Here we go. Love this. This is remarkable. Like somebody pointed out quite correctly that hate Trump, love Trump's war is a position that is held by a tiny minority of people in the U.S., but virtually everyone who holds that position is in media. And here we go. Here we go.
That regime change, Trump, where everything is self-serving, mismanaged, run by a cadre of clown car tools like Pete Hegseth and others, and done for his own benefit, for his own enrichment, for the enrichment of his family and his friends.
Yeah, wow, you know, unlike that great guy Dick Cheney who endorsed Kamala Harris and turned over Iraq to a company that he owned. And let me just say, the Iraqi resistance specifically hit facilities belonging to the Dick Cheney's company, just as in the past week, so...
That's where
Fuck
you have
'em.
to say, this is, even if you are willing to say, I'm not...
What's wild about this is he's avoiding taking any kind of... This is so cowardly. Because he hasn't actually taken any position himself. In fact, we're mostly through the video. He said he was going to deal with the question of, like, is this the right thing? Is this legal? So far he hasn't. Admittedly, the answer to is this legal doesn't take any time, because it is very clearly no.
They assassinated the Ayatollah. I'm okay with that. The U.S. is involved in regime change. I'm okay with that. I would still argue that Trump being the one running it, even if you passed all of those initial...
Yeah, well, but where do you stand here? Like, what's with this fucking... Why are you hiding in the shrubberies, David? Why not just come out and say, you know, do you think, if Trump was not involved in this, do you think that, bombing Iranian civilians and trying to impose a puppet regime on them is a good thing or not?
The thresholds I just mentioned is an absolute disaster. And by the way, Trump doesn't give a damn about the service members that have already been killed. Trump says there will be more, and that's the way it is, and that's what I want.
I mean, what, do you think that the people who've been sending them to die for oil companies in the past gave a shit about them? Have you seen the state of Walter Reed Hospital? It was a scandal under Bush in the first few years of the war on Iraq, which has never really ended. Because it was just just a complete disaster. Like, none of them give a shit about them.
Talk about next. If you felt the internet getting colder and creepier, more propaganda, more surveillance, you were not imagining it. The big social platforms are optimizing.
I mean, is he going to... He's not going to talk about fucking the so-called age verification.
An image and video-based social media operating in the Instagram and YouTube lane that supports both short-form clips and long-form landscape video.
Okay, this is an ad. So, yes. Now, there's a longer one from him, and I thought we'd look at that for the last, I guess, 10 minutes of this. This is also Pac-Man. And let's see, like, does, see if we get even more of this fucking hedging.
The internet you see every day is just a fraction of what's out there. Our sponsor, Private Internet.
Skipping over his sponsor.
It turned into a vision video. Is really something else. We're going to look at clips of Hillary Clinton eviscerating Lauren Boebert and Nancy Mace. It turned into a conspiracy hearing. It did not.
Oh wow! I mean, let's see. We're gonna skip over this. I actually do not give a shit about Hillary Clinton, Trump. Okay, there are chapter titles. That's nice.
Donald Trump's base is starting to revolt, and impeachment is now on the table.
I mean, not really though, not in any real way. But they're going to talk about it because it allows them appear to be doing something.
I didn't say conviction, but I said impeachment.
Exactly.
Trump is burning up and skid marking to a stop over this Iran fiasco. Now let's set the stage. Trump ran on no new wars. I'm the anti-war president. I'm the guy.
I mean, he also ran on finishing the job in Gaza. Yeah, I mean, he explicitly ran on completing the genocide. So,
who will keep us out of wars? In 2016, it was Hillary will start 4 wars, but I won't.
I mean, and the thing is, Hillary Clinton said she would. In fact, Hillary Clinton has very clearly said she wanted this war.
In 2020, it was Biden will take us to war.
Biden already had taken us to war, though.
But I won't.
And again, that's not really what he said.
And in 2024, it was Kamala Harris is going to start a bunch of wars.
Which she said, like, that was literally Kamala Harris's fucking platform.
But I won't.
I mean, in fact, she specifically said that, I mean, we looked at the platform, the passage, where she was criticizing Trump for basically not having attacked Iran yet.
We now have Trump openly launching a war in Iran. Republicans are falling all over themselves to say, well, it's not a war. Or, it is a war, but Trump didn't start it, Trump's going to end it.
I mean, of course he fucking started it.
Pick your own adventure.
I mean, not really, though. I mean, it is true that the U.S. started it way back in the 1980s, really.
Ad-libs, whatever sounds better. It can be a war or not, depending on how you can praise Trump rather than criticize him. Now, the civilian deaths are mounting. That includes children. U.S.
Yeah, 1/3 children.
Troops have been killed. Trump says more will be killed. Pete Hegseth says more American troops will be killed.
I mean, at this point, is it really surprising that they're saying that? I mean, it's become very clear that Iran can defend themselves.
And Trump was running the entire operation over the weekend from Mar-a-Lago while dancing with people and looking swollen and sweaty and orange.
Well, I mean, see, that's the problem. When you when you carry out a criminal war of aggression while swollen and orange, I mean, criminal aggression, you know, that's fine. But David here draws the line at doing it while swollen and orange.
As this was all proceeding, the backlash here is starting to come from the MAGA right. Now,
Not really.
I want to remind you, this is not an adjudication of whether the Ayatollah was a good guy.
Yeah, I mean, he continues to be... So he's going to continue to be extremely cowardly and not take any real position on this.
He wasn't. This is not an adjudication of whether Iran is better off with the Ayatollah gone. Iran is better off with the Ayatollah gone.
Well, like, does... Like, even buying into the premise here, surely that depends on what comes after. And we don't know yet. They haven't chosen the successor.
Of course, the Ayatollah was 86. They already had a succession plan in place, and it's not clear that...
I mean, he talks about this like this was something that they recently strung together that when they realized he was getting on a bit. It's literally in the Constitution. The succession plan is in the Constitution. It's been there for 47 years. It's like... The U.S. does not cobble the U.S. doesn't cobble together a succession plan when they notice that they're, like... When they notice that U.S. presidents are, like, fucking 90 years old, you know, when they're on the young side. There's a constitutional order of succession, like there is a kind of most countries. This isn't... Like, what is this?
Change who's in charge, but The Ayatollah's terrible. I'm against authoritarian regimes,
Really? All of them?
theocratic regimes. I'm against Maduro. I'm against the Cuban regime. I'm against Orban. I'm against Putin. I'm against Kim Jong-un. And of course, I was against the Ayatollah.
Well, I mean, it's interesting. He manages to avoid naming... Well, actually, I guess Orban is a special case because, yeah, he is actually a U.S. ally. But he's one who's kind of disfavored. But other than that, he has not mentioned a single U.S. ally in there. He didn't mention a single U.S. client state. He didn't mention Bukele. He did not mention, Saudi Arabia. He did not, he didn't mention Israel, which is, pretty fucking authoritarian. I'd say genocide is a kind of authoritarian thing to be getting up to.
But the questions are different ones. Was this legal?
No, there's no question.
Does anyone care?
No, clearly not. They got away with genocide. They're still getting away with genocide. Why would they give a shit about the legality of aggression?
Trump sticking to what he promised he would do during the campaign. And now we are starting to see people like Tucker Carlson, Dave Smith.
Starting to see, Tucker Carlson has been trying to worm his way into pro-Palestine circles for ages. And, to hijack it and sort of misdirect it towards Nazi shit.
Pro-Trump pollsters who say this is the very wrong direction. Forget about Marjorie Taylor Greene, who has already abandoned Trump, and later in the show we'll get to her latest statements about what is going on. A whole bunch of right-wing people are saying this isn't what we signed up for, this isn't what Trump promised, and this needs to stop right now. Now, what we do have are people like J.D. Vance and Tulsi Gabbard, who for the last 8 years have been saying we shouldn't be doing stuff exactly...
let me just say, I remember getting back before she was just really obviously right-wing. But there was this time, there were a few years when a lot of leftists, naively thought she was on side. And I caught lots of shit for saying, obviously she's not really anti-war. Look at her fucking record. So fucking called that.
Like this, in the position of having to come up with justifications for it, because of course they're in the administration. Now you can no longer go with Trump the dove. Trump would never start wars. He would never attack anybody.
He also attacked Iran in his last term. We're just not talking about that for some reason.
It's having to shift because Trump is starting a war. So
again, another one. It's not the first one.
The shift is, this is defensive. And later you'll hear from Marco Rubio. Marco Rubio goes, well, we had to attack them because if they were attacked, they might have come after us.
Yeah, the idea is that that Iran exercising their right of self-defense justifies the U.S. committing aggression. Even the Defense Council at Nuremberg did not dare make a ridiculous argument like that. But I'm noticing the time. It is time to wrap up. Sorry about the technical difficulties. Thanks to everyone who joined in. I hope you enjoyed the stream. And if you'd like to support the stream and support my work, let me just tell you briefly about a project I am working on. It is, let me just find the link, the Punto Final translation project. And this at this link you will find everything that I've translated in the project so far. Currently, I am trying to raise $450, of which I have now raised $190 to translate an article about dodgy financial dealings of the CIA-backed Christian Democrats and the eternal vice president of FIFA from 1969. And anyone who wants to support that can do so here. Have a very good rest of your weekend. I look forward to seeing you next week on Friday.